Merry Christmas, everybody!
Ho, 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 ho. Was that Sean Corn?
It was John Chimney Pot, yeah.
Wow. I can't believe it. How did you get him to record that for us?
I've got a lot of dirt on him.
To edition 84, part 1 of All Killa No Filla podcast with me, Rachel Fairburn, Kiri, Pritchard-McLean. McLean! Oh my God, let me do that again.
Who the fuck is she?
I don't know, my voice. I don't know what happened there. Let me do that again. Welcome to edition 84, part 1 of All Killa No...
Oh my God. This is a disaster. Are you pissed again?
No!
I can't even joke about that because you'll get some woman saying, I'm so glad that Rachel's through the other side of her drinking problem.
Oh my God. For a kick-off, I've never had a drinking problem. I like going to the pub. Secondly, I haven't been down the boozer in over 3 weeks. I had one mulled wine at a gig. I don't have to explain myself to anybody. Anyway, welcome to Sorry, let me just start again. As my perceived drinking problem that doesn't exist, which is actually insulting, not just to me, to people who actually do have drinking problems, has it affected your free podcast at any point?
Fucking hell, just turn it in. It's Christmas.
Welcome to edition
80. One day off you.
Welcome to edition 84, part 1 of All Killa No Filla podcast with me, Rachel Fairburn, Kiri, Pritchard-McLean and Sean Corn. Just before we start, we'll do our usual disclaimer. This isn't hero worship. We do this podcast because we have mutual interest in serial killers. As long as we are doing this podcast, it stops us from writing to them in prison. Episode 84.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Also, happy holidays is creeping in over here. Don't like that.
Happy holiday to me is like enjoy your 18 to 30
yeah
thing.
Happy holidays.
Oh, is it a way of being sort of inclusive? Is it a way of going, oh, happy holidays, as in you might not celebrate Christmas?
No, it's an Americanism that's crept over.
Okay.
Let's not try and make everything kind.
I wouldn't fucking dare. I hope you're all having a lovely day, afternoon, evening, whenever you're listening to this.
Yeah.
I hope you had a nice amount of food. I hope your turkey wasn't as dry as Rachel's arsehole.
I thought you were going to say wit then. I'm absolutely gutted.
You should get merch with wit as dry as my arsehole on it.
Do you know what? Don't, please don't. It's Christmas. Having said that, I hope you all got nice presents.
Rachel, it's not about the presents, is it?
Of course it is.
It's about television.
To be honest with you, I'm not really bothered. I like getting my nieces and my nephews presents, but I'm not fussed about presents, really. It's nice to get a present. I like buying presents for people. I like to get my friends presents and stuff, but I'm not as materialistic as you'd think, mate.
I am materialistic, and that's my problem because I'm now at the point where I can buy the things I want when I want.
This year, I have to be quite quiet here because it's just, don't want to spoil the illusion, but it's just before Christmas. This year, Tim and I have just gone, look, we've got too much stuff. Let's just save money for when we can actually go on a nice trip somewhere. So let's just have a maximum of 80 quid for Christmas gifts. Fine. All these presents are as if he's going through the menopause. I bought him.
What have you got in some cooling gel socks?
He likes to have a bath, so you know those sort of bridges that go over a bath?
Oh, yeah.
So I got him one of them that you can put there's a little drink holder on it and you can pop your Kindle on it, which is a design flaw because your hands are wet, you can't turn the page, but that's fine. Bought him some bath bombs and I bought him some Japanese-style pyjamas.
I think this is lovely.
He's like some sort of 70s man.
But it's lovely. I think those are all really thoughtful things. He's going to have a lovely, lovely night.
Relaxing.
Yeah. And then he's going to be like, these pyjamas are really uncomfortable and never wear them again.
Exactly. Do you know what? I thought that. They are very nice, actually. Nice cotton. He's not a pyjama person, though. I am. We've discussed this before.
Yeah.
Pop some clothes on in bed. Anyway, we need to tell him what we're here for, don't we?
Yeah, we do.
This is your Christmas special.
Yes, we thought we'd dump a spesh on you. I won't be saying that again. I apologise. Sorry for ruining the day. Some of you will have food repeating on you and you didn't need me to yell dump a spesh.
That's someone's dirty talk.
Dumper Spesh is what happened last year at Christmas when that guy came around to drain the septic tank.
Oh,
anyway.
God. Is that a year? That's a year ago now. Can you believe it?
It's a year ago.
Since Robingate.
And then 6 months later, it needed doing again.
Really?
Incredible scenes. Yeah.
God, honestly, I think this year's gone so quick. I can't believe it. Absolutely shocked. I'm at Tim's parents' house now. I'm, as we are pre-Christmas again, I am just enjoying wrapping. I like to wrap the presents because his mum's busy. I'm like, I'll wrap the presents. I love to sit in the room and just wrap everyone's presents. I really enjoy it.
That's really sweet.
It's nice, isn't it?
Uncharacteristically sweet, yeah.
I know. I'm a woman of many sides. Most of them sly. But occasionally.
You're like those dice that they use for Dungeons and Dragons, but nearly all of it lands on just the word sly.
What's the word your mum uses?
Oh, yeah, what was it? What did she say about Stephen Fry again?
Spiteful.
Spiteful, that's it.
Spiteful. I love that word.
Incredible scenes if you knew her behaviour.
Spiteful. Anyway, so this...
It's quite the word to be thrown
This
around.
is the Christmas special. So what we've decided to do, we did do a live show way back in May now, can you believe that?
Yikes.
At Kentish Town Forum. So that was one of our socially distanced live shows, and we're going to do that as your Christmas special episode, because we did a bit of we went off piece as it was a live show, and we did the Krays twins. So we're going to record that for you now, and that is your Crimbo listening.
Yes. It's a really fascinating... We know it's not a serial killer. Oh, well, maybe between them. No, not quite.
I mean, there's probably stuff we don't know about.
There's probably stuff we don't know about, but it's a really fascinating story, and you can kind of see where the mythology comes from, because it's got everything. It's got murder, it's got family, it's got, like, the swinging 60s, glamorous women, the East End of London. There's an awful lot to be interested in that makes it feel quite unique, true crime-wise. Mm-hmm. So we're going to start off with the lads, with the twins' childhood. So their mum was called Violet and the dad was called Charlie. Yeah. Heads up, that name gets reused. If you're thinking, oh, I know of Charlie Cray, it's because it was the other name of the other brother.
The older brother, Charlie, named after his father, he was 6 years older than Ronald and Reggie. Ronald and Reginald were born on the 24th of October 1933 in Haggerston in London. So yeah, that's quite a big age gap. But I mean, we are both children of age gap families, aren't we? Like my sister's 6 years younger than me, which I think is it's quite a big gap, really, considering when there's only two of you.
Yes.
I mean, they clearly thought, what the fuck is wrong with this one? We'd better try for another one that might be slightly normal. But that backfired. Because you've got age gap. Your brothers are older
7
than you,
and 9, years older than me, which was definitely a big age gap when I was... now it's nothing. It's not even like it's there.
Yeah.
But when I was growing up, I remember thinking when I was like... Because my brothers moved out when I was 9. So I went from having boys and it being a big, noisy house. One moved away at 16 and the other one at 18. So I became an only child at 9, basically, which is... explains why I'm a stand-up. But I remember thinking when people would talk about their brothers and sisters... Oh, that's not how I feel about my brothers. I remember thinking, oh, they're sort of like friends of the family, because they weren't around much. And I'd love it when they were, but they just disappeared, basically, for all my teenage years. So, yeah, that was a bit strange. But it doesn't strike me that there was any distance with Ronald and Randy and Charlie, because he was sort of like... He wasn't as intense as the twins were, but he was definitely the third wheel to their sort of a setup. They did also have a daughter who was born after the twins, who sadly died, so it just ended up with the 3 lads. Now,
God, can you imagine being a girl and having Ronnie and Reggie as your older brothers? No one's going to go out with you.
Yeah, fucking terrifying. Yeah, you would go to your grave with a perfectly intact hymen, which is how I intend to do it, Rachel. You know me.
So the dad, Charles, he was a wardrobe dealer. I'd imagine this is one of those good old East End jobs with, like, you know, stuff on the back of a cart going, do you need a wardrobe? Oh, yeah, we need one of them. And he was of Irish descent, and Violet was of Romani descent. Is that how you say it?
Romani.
Romani. Fucking hell. Romani descent.
Romani?
Romani. She was of Romani descent. Now, obviously, they were twins, Ronald and Reggie. Reggie was 10 minutes older than Ronnie. They were very, very close as children. They shared the same dreams as well. Not like, you know, metaphorically. They shared them like actual... They dreamt the same dreams. I always find that really fascinating, the twin thing. But except every twins that I have met, I've always said, oh, do you have that twin thing? And they're like, nah.
Yeah, I don't know if it was just a thing that was sort of big up until the 80s. You know, like Uri Geller.
Yeah.
And then people are sort of, they did some empirical tests and got wise to it. But yeah, I think twins do undoubtedly have an extremely strong bond. But I don't think people who aren't twins can even empathise with. But I don't think it's as magical as people sort of claim, because they're like, oh, you know, twins, they can change the frequency of microwaves, or, you know, there's just like mad shit that goes with it. Like,
they can move objects just with the power of thought.
Yeah. No, they got that. Yeah, they were very, very close. Now, they both got diphtheria as kids. Also, it's really interesting, their heritage. So that's Irish and Romany, and I think that is two of the best looking groups of people. And I think they were quite, like, when they're younger, really, really striking and really handsome.
I think it's all the clobber, mate.
Do you think so?
It's clothes. Fine feathers make fine birds, as my granddad always used to say.
Really beautiful phrase. I've not heard that before.
Have you not heard that before?
No.
Yeah, it'd be like, fine feathers make fine birds. Being bitchy, basically. But in a very wise-sounding way.
Yeah.
So I just think it's all clothing.
Yeah.
Because the clothing was so sharp and good.
Yeah.
Also, Violet, I think their interest in looking smart and dressing well sort of started very early, because Violet, their mother, she was very proud of them because twins were quite rare at the time. I imagine they're quite rare to survive both of them.
Yeah.
It would be, you know, and later in life, actually, to survive both of them. She used to dress them up really nicely, and people would stop and look in the pram at them and be like, oh, what lovely little boys, and, you know, the rest of it. But I've got this thing, like, I've seen pictures of the Krays twins as babies. I just find it really funny. I've got this thing where I just find pictures of my friend, like anyone as babies, funny. Like, I've got a picture.
Were you about to call them my friends?
Well, I was going to say my friend, like pictures of my friends in particular, like pictures of famous people or like people you know of as babies. I just find funny, but pictures of my friends as babies, I find hilarious. Like,
you're talking about that one Will Duggan one you've mentioned.
Yeah,
before,
but also you sent me a picture of you as a little baby ages ago. And this sounds really weird. I've got it saved in my favourites on my phone, as I have one of Will and one of Tim and one of several other friends, because I just look at them and I just find it really funny. I'm like, that's them as a baby. I don't know why I find it so funny. I just think I don't know what it is. I don't know why it makes me laugh. It's like, oh my God, you were a baby once, and that's really funny. Do you know, no one knows what I mean when I say this. I just think it's just funny. I just find it hilarious.
No, I mean, yeah, each to their own. I think it's fucking weird, but I think you're right, though, that I think that dressing them up and looks were very important to them, and I think it did start in childhood, because they became, and Violet by extension, celebrities where they lived on the Valence Road, because they'd sort of go around the place and everyone would stop and want to chat about these two very cute twins. So they both get diphtheria. Now, Ronnie is far sicker with it. And are they about 3 when they get diphtheria?
3 years old, yeah.
Yeah. And now Ronnie nearly dies of it. And the only reason it's credited to him surviving is Violet goes into hospital, is like, you are not looking after this child as well as I could look after him, even though she's got no medical training. So she checks them out, because also Ronnie's extremely distressed being in the hospital without Reggie.
Oh, that's quite really sad, that, isn't it?
Yeah, they're really sort of forlorn. I think Ronnie has a much deeper bond to Reggie, but that's some speculation. She discharges Ronnie, takes him home, and very quickly he gets better. Although they say they see a slight personality change in him, because there's a lot of ill mental health throughout these episodes, but I would say that Ronnie suffers with it to a far more acute extent than Reggie.
Diphtheria is a childhood disease that we don't really have anymore due to vaccinations. Do you remember the advert that used to be on TV?
Vaccines don't work, Rachel. It's the government.
Oh, is that what it is? Oh, I see.
It's the government trying to put a chip in you.
So all those people shouting outside the vaccination centre near where I live are right, is what you're saying?
Absolutely. They're soothsayers, and they're the only people you can trust.
Yeah. I remember this advert that used to be on when I was a kid. My earliest memory, one of my earliest memories, is when I was a very small child and having was it for polio? And it was like drops they put in your mouth.
Yeah.
The taste of that being awful is one of my very first memories. I must have been really little. But there used to be an advert on that was like, it was a really eerie advert, and it was like kids skipping. And it'd go like, measles, mumps, rubella, whooping cough, polio. And then it'd be like, get your child vaccinated. It was so eerie. But I've checked with other people, they do remember it. I was starting to think, is this a false memory of something I read when I was a kid and now I'm weird? I did this at the live show. I came up with, I've been being a pro-vaccine person, obviously, because it's the right thing to do. Hence the reason kids live now. I made up my own little song about vaccinations. Do you want to hear it?
I'd absolutely love to hear another Rachel Fairburn original, deep cut.
It's to the, because I thought, the measles, mumps, rubella, whooping cough, diphtheria, polio song wasn't very catchy. It was just eerie, but memorable. I've remembered it all these years, and I've remembered all the childhood diseases that we don't really have anymore. So I thought what we should do is bring it up to date to the tune of Mambo Number 5, that absolute classic that we all know and love. Thank you, Louis Bega. So here we go. This is my pro-vaccine for childhood diseases. A little bit of measles in my life, a little bit of whooping cough by my side, a little bit of mumps is what I see, a little bit of polio's what I need, a little bit of glue in the sun, a little bit of diphtheria all night long, a little bit of rubella, here I am, a little bit of all goes in my arm. There you go. Although glue is the curveball there.
Yeah, I was going to say.
I just popped that in to make it my own from my own experiences.
Rachel, that was, it's the feel-good hit of the summer. It really is.
Grimbo number 1 it should be. You're too late.
That's lovely. Really, really nice. Well thought out, well executed.
And a good meaning as well.
And a good meaning, yeah. It shows your heart's in the right place.
Well, thank
if
God.
If you get a vaccine, it'll move and it'll be in your ears.
Oh, God, don't.
Can I just say, as a tiny point of... I feel like
you are joking. That is that what you have to say?
No, I get why some people from certain communities are hesitant about a vaccine. I just want to say that.
But in the same, I just feel fucking look at evidence and grow up, everybody.
Yeah, no, I agree. But I mean, I'm thinking specifically, if I was in the black community where there's slightly lower pickup of vaccine, and you look back at all the fucked up shit that the medicine has done to black people, secretly and publicly, I would be a bit like, why should I suddenly trust that you have my best interests at heart? The fucking thick old lads I went to school with who, cis white dudes who everything's been on their side and will have been thoroughly tested on them. They're not like loads of women I know whose periods have gone fucking mad because they didn't do the research. Then I just think, shut your fucking mouth and get a vaccine, you absolute fucking baby. But I understand why there's reticence anyway.
I'm not even getting involved in this. My thoughts on this are equal to everybody. If that makes sense. Just get on with it. Anyway, they went to school, the Krays.
Yeah.
They attended Wood Close School on Brick Lane and Daniel Street School. And in 1938, they were living in Haggerston. They moved to Valence Road in Bethnal Green. They referred to their house as Fort Valence. Mm-hmm. Which is...
Well, basically, Violet's flat became where they would sort of conduct business from. And it was incredibly well secured by their firm. So, yeah, Fort Valence was... I mean, there's very famous pictures of Ronnie and Reggie having cups of tea in their in very proud Violet's flat. Their family's really interesting. So they come from a line of boxers. So their granddad was Jimmy Cannonball Lee. I absolutely love boxing names from that time.
Yeah, they're pretty good, aren't they?
Yeah, definitely. What would you be?
God, I don't know.
Rachel, now what, Fairburn?
Yeah. I was going to say the piston. I don't know why.
I like that.
But then I'd lose and people would be like, the piston's been pissed on again. What would you be?
I'd be Kiri the hernia Pritchard-McLean. Because I think any kind of exertion and something would just pop out of me in some direction.
Oh, do you know what? Hernia is one of those, like the thought of a hernia is one of those things that I'm like, oh.
I know some people who get them all the time. Oh, well, not all the time. I know someone who had a lot growing up as a kid and a herniated testicle as well. And I know someone who's I don't think they'll mind me saying, but I will check. I know someone who has a hernia now that they've been waiting like 2 years for the operation because someone forgot to put them on the list, sure. And
brilliant.
Yeah, it's in their stomach. And I genuinely am the reason that they got it because it's Kath from Tarot.
Oh, of course. Oh my God, that's been going on for so long, because when we were staying in a flat in Edinburgh, I helped to pull the thing down.
Yeah, because she's just like a quiet little Trojan and will get on lifting things if you let her. So you have to be like, don't pick that up. But
so how did she get that?
Well, we were doing a dance routine, and as part of it, Ed and her lifted Adam. And I mean, there's nothing of him, but must have been at the wrong angle. And just a hernia popped out, and she was like, ow. And then we still made her keep rehearsing with it for about half an hour. And then she got it investigated. Turns out it was a hernia.
Oh my God, working conditions in the sketch community are awful.
Do you know what? If it was someone who made my clothes, I wouldn't buy from them the way I treat them.
So what you're telling people to do is not buy tickets to see them? Is that what you're saying?
No, because if they buy tickets to see them, in fact they are on tour next year, if they buy tickets to see them, I can relax working conditions. Yeah.
Oh dear.
They also had an auntie who was a boxer. So their Auntie Rose was like a champion boxer, and she prided herself. She used to say that she could beat any man or woman in the ring, which obviously sounds like quite a sexual thing.
Yeah. It's quite interesting as well, because boxing was seen as a very popular way in the East End of London as a way of disciplining yourself and bettering yourself. I think it still is to a certain, in sort of working class areas, like particularly like in Manchester as well, where I'm from, sort of Moston, and Moss Side as well. There's huge, busy boxing clubs.
Yes.
That young lads and girls go to.
Yeah.
So it's quite a good way to sort of instill a bit of discipline and something to focus on.
Yeah. Well, the boxing club they end up going to, they start in one, and the one that they end up, having the majority of their boxing career, in inverted commas, at, is Repton Boxing Club. And that is sponsored by the Repton private school, the very privileged school that someone we know went to.
Didn't do him any good.
Yeah, Repton Boxing Club. So it was basically subsidised by the private school as a way of going, there you go, boys, you can punch your way out of poverty. But it did work. It was a way of gaining like social mobility, especially in the East End. There weren't many ways out. And presumably the lads didn't want to sell wardrobes. Not that there's any shame in that.
Just before they started boxing, though, they were evacuated during World War II to Suffolk with Violet and Charlie, and they actually stayed there for a year. But they ended up going back to London because Violet missed her friends and family. What happened was the boys enjoyed being in Suffolk, but they behaved appallingly, didn't they?
Yes. Their house is quite a spicy place anyway. Their dad, Charlie, isn't at home much because he's dodging the draft. And when he would come home, he was often drunk and he would often hit Violet. And one day he came home drunk. He didn't know Ronnie was in, and he hit Violet. And Ronnie came down, punched him, and he said, if you ever hit Mum again, I'm going to kill you, and was apparently just deadly serious. And you know what? He never hit him again.
What a great guy.
Yeah. So they were evacuees, so they were evacuated out. Now, it's really fascinating. I can't remember if I was reading or listening to something, probably listening. It was talking about, we have kind of a romantic idea of evacuees, that it's very tragic, but, romantic. We think of, Goodnight, Mr. Tom. But apparently, often they would turn up and the families didn't want them, so they'd treat them like shit and make them work really hard. or the kids would be incredibly badly behaved and bored, so they'd be like setting fire to things, smashing shit up. And apparently it was, for a lot of people, it was just a horrible situation of like, oh, these little East End thugs are now ruining our lovely village of the year 1932. So they're wreaking havoc as evacuees and they're basically sent back, because also loads of the kids had really fond memories of the Blitz, because they play in the rubble and they go and get bits from the houses. It's a wild situation. Now, in 1942, Ronnie gets a head injury in a disagreement with Reggie. Apparently the twins used to fight all the time, like physically fight each other, and no one could really get in the way because they were both tough as well. So they have a fight, and I think Reggie knocks him out and gives Ron this big head injury. And furthermore, his personality shifts slightly.
There was an incident, it was a terrible accident. So this was when they were 10, where they saw a 6-year-old boy had his head crushed by a truck. Was it the police silenced the two lads who... They said, look, this is what happened. And was it the police that said, oh, no, that's not what happened, let's just put this down as...
Basically, they were helping unload a truck. What they do is a common thing, that they go along to a truck and they go, "Can I help you unload, mister?" And they could say, "Yeah, all right." So they didn't have to do it, and the kids would do it, and sometimes they would get chuck money. So the Krays are doing this, and there's another little boy, he's only 6 years old, who's sort of around there. Now, the driver forgot to put the handbrake on, so this truck goes over a 6-year-old and very brutally crushes him against the wall, and the boys see it, and it's apparently incredibly distressing. And then what they do is the truck driver says, "If you tell the police what happened, I'll get you." And they hated the fact that this adult was using their authority to cover up what happened and get justice for the kid. They thought it was incredibly unjust because he was worried about losing his job. Not the fact that a kid has been crushed and a kid's died, that it was all about protecting this adult. So they got a real problem with authority stemming from that. It was a very formative moment for them. And this is about the time that they get really into boxing. Now, they're sort of, I think their boxing career is overstated because apparently they didn't do it for very long.
No, and also they used to produce their own leaflets with pretend fights that they'd won on. And sort of...
So they'd basically make up fake posters because they didn't fight in many fights. Now, Reggie was very good. He won all 7 of his fights he had, but he only ever did 7 fights. And he broke, in his lifetime, he broke 11 jaws. He had this thing that he used to call the cigarette punch. They'd have a cigarette and he would offer to light it, and when he went to light it, he would punch them. And that's how he broke the jaws. Yeah, absolutely. Now,
I mean, I guess that doesn't work in the boxing ring.
No.
Someone's got to take your gloves off to have a cig.
Now, Ronnie, on the other hand, is twice disqualified for, and I quote, unsportsmanlike behaviour. So basically, Reggie was very technically good, very quick, very strong. Ronnie was strong, but a fucking maniac. And, absolutely unable to control him or his moods or his temper. So he would fight dirty. He would,
Sounds familiar.
He'd be like an animal in the ring and really unpredictable, and everyone was kind of scared of him. But he quit, and their boxing career, in inverted commas, wound up very, very quickly.
I don't think it was the glittering career that people think it was.
No.
They basically were very good at their own PR, weren't they?
Yeah, incredibly good. I mean, if you look back, they only actually appear in a paper once, I think, for actually boxing. Their name appears. The rest of it is all sort of doctored. It's absolutely wild. Now, at 16, they had mugshots, so they're already in trouble to have mugshots with the police at 16. And it was because they got signed up. They were time to do their national service, which I think it was in 1952.
1952. Now, they were not up for this at all, which, when you consider that Ronnie was obsessed with Winston Churchill and was quite a patriotic person, this is a real sort of selfish move on their behalf. It's like, well, it doesn't apply to me. And you would think that, considering how patriotic and his obsession with Churchill was, you'd think he'd be well up for it. Now, they were supposed to show up to the Tower of London to sign up for this national service, and they said, yeah, we'll do this, but we'll only do it if we can be PE teachers. The authorities were like, well, no, that's not really how it works, lads. So this was just a few minutes after they'd arrived at the tower to sign up. Now, they punched a corporal and then they left and they walked back to Bethnal Green. Now, this is a big thing that happens. They walk everywhere, don't they? I mean, this is a time where buses are plentiful and the tube was running, but no, the lads like to walk. The next day, they were arrested, but they were still AWOL in September 1952. And at this point, they assaulted a police officer, and they ended up being 2 of the very last prisoners to ever be held in the Tower of London, which is quite interesting.
Amazing.
They were then transferred to Shepton Mallet Prison, which was a military prison. And when they heard they were going to be dishonourably discharged from national service, which they weren't actually doing, were they?
No.
They started to behave appallingly. They dominated the exercise area, which I don't know how you do that. What did you do? Just star jumps and get in everyone's way?
Hog the weights, I think, and
hogging
intimidate
the
people.
weights, yeah. They tipped a bucket of piss on a guard. They threw hot tea on another one.
Can I just say, why is there a bucket of piss around?
Oh, I guess that was their toilet, wasn't it?
Yeah, I still think if I worked in a prison and I was giving them buckets of piss, I wouldn't be amazed if I got it thrown over me.
If you're working in a prison and they were having to, do their ablutions, I hate that word, into a bucket, you'd make sure that bucket was emptied regularly, wouldn't you? They handcuffed a guard to the bars of the prison. What are they doing? And they also set bedding on fire.
Absolutely.
So,
well, they're just liabilities, aren't they?
This is the best one. They moved to a communal cell and they assaulted a guard with a vase, not a poem, a fact, and they escaped. Where is this vase in a prison? Was it popped there to make the place a little bit more homely?
Well, this is the thing. I can't imagine a building where you have the grandeur of a vase, but also the absolute slum nature of a bucket of piss. It's like one or the other.
The best was they escaped and then they were recaptured. And they spent their last night in military custody, drinking cider, eating Krays, smoking cigarillos. They were in the company of really young national servicemen who were guarding them. So I guess these young lads were like, we're scared to death of these two. Yeah. It's the last night. Just give them whatever they want.
Don't give the work experience guy the fucking Krays. They're wild. I also love that the fact they walk everywhere. It just makes me laugh so much. Now, the longest legitimate job that they had is 6 months, and they worked at the fish market in Billingsgate.
Yeah, fucking hell. Anyone, right, that you meet that is from London and working class will regale you with a tale of how they, or their father, or their father's 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 father once worked at Billingsgate. It's like one of those rites of passage that is like, I can't even think of what the Manchester version would be. Probably working at Kendall's, the department store.
Or Bellevue.
Bellevue. My mum used to work at... My mum worked at Bellevue dog track. Don't at me. She wasn't, pro racing before anyone fucking starts.
I remember you telling me, I think on this podcast, that they would just cock their leg on her, and I still think about it all the time.
One of her jobs when she was a teenager was to put the dogs in the trap to start the race. And because obviously these are racing dogs, they're obviously not trained for being, a pet. And if you stopped, the dogs would just pee up your leg, as if like, oh, you're there now, are you? Right, I'm just gonna have a wee. So yeah, she's gone stinking a dog piss.
Nice,
but still better than working at Kendall's, and I say that
still better than smelling a fish, I'd argue.
Do you know what? I would argue that, yeah.
Yeah, fuck me. You know when you walk outside a fish shop?
Oh, I can't deal with it. I can't go in butcher shops. I can't go in fishmongers. I can't go in butcher. I never have been able to. Interesting. 3 people that have worked at Billingsgate. It is part of, I think, I'm a Cockney bingo. So I think it, worked at Billingsgate was definitely one of them. George Orwell worked there.
Really?
Joey Essex. Yeah, Joey Essex. And famously, Mickey Flanagan also worked at Billingsgate for a while. I think part of the Cockney bingo is worked at Billingsgate, seen a Pearly King, and knew the Krays. That's part of.
Have you told the Pearly King story on here?
Oh my god, I don't think I have, no. So, this is a second-hand story, but it's genuinely true. So, Tim, my boyfriend Tim, has lived in London for a long time, and he used to live in Archway. And he said once that he was getting off at the tube station. And so I think we have to explain to listeners that aren't English or British what a Pearly King and Queen are. Yes. Basically,
can I just say there might be a reference? If you've seen the popular Disney film Mary Poppins, the original...
yes.
When they go into Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious, when they go into the animated world, there's some people there and they're in black with like little white dots all them. Those are pearl buttons. Yes. And so the Pearly Kings and Queens, they basically sewed these amazing outfits that are covered in pearl buttons.
They're like a charitable organisation, the Pearly Kings and Queens, and there's different ones for different areas. And they sew like little shell buttons onto themselves and have these amazing outfits. It's a real sort of Eastend tradition kind of thing. Anyway, Tim was once getting off the tube at Archway and he was like, oh, there's the Pearly King of Finsbury Park with his son, who is the Pearly Prince, I believe. And they were so drunk in their... bear in mind they're dressed in their traditional regalia. He said they were so drunk, they were staggering along the platform, vomiting as they staggered. One of them slipped in the other one's sick. And they had their arms around each other, just like, come on, Dad, we can do this, we can get home. And he said it was like in the time before everyone had, a camera on their phone. It was just like, I would have loved to have just got a video of that. Just, he said, for myself, just to relive the joy that was the Pearly King and Prince of Finsbury Park vomiting on Archway Station. I was like, was it late? He's like, no. He said it was like a Sunday at like 7 o'clock.
Oh my God. I was saying to you when you spoke about this, it's because Pearly Kings and Queens is such an iconic visual representation of London in particular, I think. But like London culture. And to see them doing something as undignified as like blowing chunks, it's like seeing a beefeater shit his pants.
I don't think so.
I just think
also,
it's so
the
disturbing.
fact that they're called beef eaters, I don't want anything to do with their shit. Thank you.
Like Jordan
very much.
Peterson, only eating red meat.
Oh, God.
So they worked at Billingsgate Fish Market only for 6 months, and they earned £2 a week, and it was their Uncle Joe who employed them. Now, early days, they start to get sort of a taste for refined things, and things I guess that lazily wouldn't have been associated with something that working class people would have enjoyed. So they both love poetry, they both love classical music, and obviously they both love walking home.
They love a walk. Also, I do apologise that there was some heavy traffic just going past then, because I am in the countryside, and I think that was, what do they call it? Plant? Do they call it plant machinery?
Yes.
That's going past. So I do apologise for the noise, but just enjoy it. If you're in America, just enjoy it as the sounds of the English countryside.
Here's another one. Actually, that's the sound of the English towns.
That's the sound of inner city London.
Now, about this time, sort of mid-50s, the first murder occurs. Now, this is about the time as well that they put their gang together that's known as the Firm. So anyone who works for the Krays or is around them is part of the Firm. There was a rival gang at the time called the Watney Streeters, and they were all sort of dockers, and they would regularly have sort of brawls and, to sort of establish dominance. But the first murder comes in 1956. There's a car dealer that Ronnie has a disagreement with that he shoots and kills. Now, he doesn't get arrested for it because Reggie provides an alibi for him.
At this point as well, they get in there, they've got a reputation for being dead hard, haven't they?
Yeah.
Solid. Not to be messed with, just in case you didn't know what dead hard meant. At this point as well, Ronnie is actually openly bisexual, which at the time, he was bisexual. He was more interested in young men, though, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Which at the time, of course, being gay at the time was illegal and frowned upon. They also said that Reggie was reported to be bisexual as well, but we don't know how much evidence there is for that. So bear in mind, at the time, Ronnie is out saying, yeah, I'm gay, what of it? I fancy men, what you gonna do?
It's huge, that.
Yeah, everyone was like, right, fine, okay. And I will say, he did have a bit of an interest in very young men, which I think was a little bit unsavoury. But
we'll talk about that a bit more later, yeah.
Yeah, the point is, though, at the time, to be like, yeah, I'm gay, what you gonna do about it, shows just how scared people were of him, that they were just like, right, fine, we'll not mention that. And he was really open about it. He used to talk about it all the time. He used to make comments about it. He'd discuss men that he found attractive. He really did not give a toss. Which, to be fair, I think we can sort of applaud him for that. But a lot of the other stuff, no.
It's also really interesting as well, isn't it, when the discussion about masculinity around being a gay man in particular. You're not going to find anyone more alpha and masculine than Ronnie Kray, and the fact that he's
Absolutely
like openly
not.
Well, he said he was bisexual, but he definitely dated far more men, and he used to do this thing where in particular he liked sort of like Italian looking men, but anyone who was a bit sort of olivey skinned, and also South American looking men. So he would bring them into like the Firm, will be having a meeting, and then Ronnie would come in with like this beautiful young sort of like Italian boy. I'd be like, all right lads, and he's like, oh, this is whatever, Giuseppe, isn't he beautiful? And then all these like incredibly masculine straight men would have to be like, well, he's absolutely beautiful, Reg, yeah. He's absolutely beautiful, Ronnie. I think I could drown in his eyes.
Oh, yeah, he's quite something. Oh, yeah.
So I love the idea of all these incredibly tough, like Cockney East End guys having to just find me like, and he got delicate ends, Ron. Isn't he beautiful?
It's really funny.
Now, in the same year that Ronnie kills this car dealer, in 1956, they have this massive basically brawl with the Watney Streeters. So it's the firm versus the Watney Streeters. Now, it was usually over sort of areas that they deemed to be theirs, or, it was no different to gangs now. It's people just look at me like I know anything about gangs. No different to gangs now.
Well, it's all the same, isn't it? It's much of a muchness.
So at this time, they were sort of like, they were unknown to the general public. So they're 22 years old, and they were basically arrested as part of 4 defendants accused of GBH with intent at the Britannia pub in Chapman Street, Stepney. Now, this murder will become very relevant later on. So basically, they turned up, they had a leaded revolver, a bayonet,
Great.
a machete, and a crowbar.
Oh my God, what are they doing? A murder or a reenactment?
That is a very extreme version of Cluedo, right? So they attacked and stabbed Terence Martin, who was part of the Watney Streeters gang. Now, the 2 other men who were accused was a docker called Dennis Ramsey, who was 34, he was from Shoreditch, and William Jones, 44, of Stepney. Now, Ronnie was also charged with possessing a loaded, it was called a young American revolver, without a licence. Ooh. And so he gets a further charge when they go to court. Basically, oh God, it's absolutely awful. So Terry Martin dies from the stab wounds and chest and head injuries. It's very, very full on. Now, they sort of claim that William Jones, which sounds like a Welsh name to me, was the instigator of it. So there's this massive fight. And then as they're sort of fleeing the scene in a Buick, who's driven by Ramsey, Ronnie's in the passenger seat. The police pull him over and said, listen, we think that you've been involved in the stabbing of Terry Martin outside the Britannia pub on Chapman Street. And then he went, I don't know the Britannia. Just completely like he didn't know the pub right next to where he lived. So the officer searches the car and then finds a bayonet and machete in the front seat and a 2-foot blood-stained crowbar in the boot.
Oh my God. Oh, that's something you don't want to see.
No. So this detective sergeant, his name is Walter Cooper. Great 60s name. So Walter Cooper searches him and he goes into Ronnie's pocket and he finds this 6-chamber revolver. And Ronnie says, be careful, sir, it's loaded. He says, I keep it for when I'm in the billiard hall for when it gets rough.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it had 4 live rounds in it with the noses filed flat, which turns them into dum-dums. And I think that means that they cause much more damage, right, when they're fired?
Mm-hmm. Oh, listen, I don't bloody know. I ain't got a clue. I can't even pick up an air rifle. Not strong enough.
Oh, God.
I tried it. That one that Will's got.
Really?
So a friend of the show, Will Duggan, has an air rifle. I can't lift it. It's too heavy.
Really?
Yeah, I just can't lift it. At all. I cannot lift it. Or maybe it's just my body resisting violence.
Your upper arms are pacifists?
100%.
They're not, because they're the things that help you type the messages you send to me about people.
Oh, don't. If you went through your phone and put the phrase, can I be awful?
Oh, God, yeah.
Oh, the vitriol. Can I be awful?
Yeah, which is always there. And I always say, absolutely. I mean, there's been the odd occasion where I'm not sure I'm ready for this, but I still open the door. So
You're always there for me.
They're basically interviewed and they said, oh, we've been in a billiard hall all night. We nipped out for a couple of drinks, but we've been there. Now, they find cuffs on the blood of Ronnie, Kray and Ramsey that night, but it's just not enough to get them in because Reggie gives them this alibi. But they can't get the murder, but they think they can get him for the gun and some other stuff, and obviously he's been involved in something. So November the 5th...
Oh, lovely, bonfire night.
Precursor to my birthday. He is sentenced to 3 years in prison, so he goes to Wandsworth. About this time, they had both bought the Regal, which was a snooker club, and they started operating a protection racket. So at the end of the 50s, they're sort of working with Jay Murray, who's a Liverpool gangster, and they're offering protection with him, and they're getting advice about how to run clubs and basically become more legitimate, because that's the sort of the second chapter, because their childhood is all sort of boxing and toughing it out as the firm, and then they move into sort of threatening businessmen. So in 1960, Ronnie is imprisoned. He only actually serves 18 months and then is let out. And in that time...
we should say as well, the Regal was actually quite successful as a club. It was busy. It was, people were going to it. They were making money from it.
Because also by this time, the Krays had sort of become celebrities. So people wanted to be seen to be in their club. And, and pop stars and stuff had started to go. But yeah, this is where things change for them. And they start getting actual money and actual power. Although, as you'll discover over the course of these episodes, their real money and their real power becomes... They make more money in prison than they ever made when they were out, basically. So that is part 1 of our Christmas special on the Krays. We hope you have a nice Christmas. Don't do that thing as well where you go, I binged it all and when's the next one?
Yeah, don't you dare.
Although we are planning on doing a very special episode. It depends with restrictions and things like that. But we thought we'd do a special ep with a friend of mine who is a drag queen by day but works in a mortuary by night, and it's so fascinating the conversations I've had with Chris, also known as the brilliant drag queen Maggie Noggy. So we thought it'd be a really interesting episode for you guys. But what I'm worried about is we'll pop it out and people won't. It'll be like, what's this shit? And I thought maybe, is that the kind of thing we put on Patreon? But also I don't want anything behind a paywall.
Yeah, I mean, other podcasts would pop that as a Patreon. But, I mean, we can do that. But my feeling on the matter is it's just a little extra thing.
Oh, yeah, they can skip it if they don't want it. Right?
If you don't like it, nobody's holding you down and making you listen.
Yeah. Unless they are, in which case you've got bigger problems.
Yeah, if they are, then do speak to someone who can help.
Great. Okay. Yeah. All right. Then we'll pop it out. I didn't want to seem like we're going, oh, we'll dangle it for the Patreons. I don't like the idea of stuff being behind a paywall. But
I am a Patreon of a couple of podcasts, mate.
Yeah, me too.
Also, do you know why I don't like the idea of doing a bit on Patreon? It's more admin.
Yeah.
And I'm like, do you know what? Have it. Take it. Everybody enjoy.
We've got to learn how to use Patreon then, as opposed to
yeah, exactly. We've got to learn. Yeah. But no, I think, I'm really keen to do it. I think it'll be a really interesting listen. I mean, it's right up our street. And I tend to think people that listen to us like things that we like too. So it's just a little bit of extra content. If you want to listen. If you don't. But, I think it will be an interesting ep anyway.
Absolutely. We hope you will as well. Let us know what you think about that, because we'll be recording it in a few... if everything goes ahead, we'll be recording it in a week or so. Nadolig Llawen, Merry Christmas, and enjoy the next episode.
Bye.